This conference will now be recorded.
I'd like to call to order today's Metropolitan Area Planning Commission meeting. If we could have our opening comments, please.
Before we begin the agenda, the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission and the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. For those at Century 2, copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure and Planning Department staff reports on all agenda items are available in the lobby. The Planning Commission's and the BZA's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning, subdivision, or variance application and his or her representative to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the chairman may extend these times by up to 2 minutes. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please share your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the room or the GoToMeeting comments box. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item. Please note that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission and the Board will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking but you wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please provide your contact information to the Planning Department. The Planning Commission and the Board are interested in hearing the views of all persons who wish to express themselves on the agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be as courteous and concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions which have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available from the planning staff. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct its own additional public hearings on these items. The decision of the BZA is final. Any appeal of a decision of the BZA is to district court.
Thank you. I've got a couple of housekeeping items here. One, if you are attending this meeting virtually, remember to unmute your microphone before speaking. And for those of us council commissioners in the chambers, please remember to speak into your mic. Also, for those joining us virtually, you will be given time to speak at the appropriate time, but once your time is up, you will not be allowed to add any further testimony. With that being said, the first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from February 18th. No, I'm sorry, excuse me. These minutes are for the meeting from March 4th. And I showed Joe Johnson absent. So it's been moved by Mr. McKay, second by Mr. Warren, and Joe Johnson was absent. Are there any additions or questions on the motion? Yes, Mr. Foster.
Mr. Chairman, I'll pass along a few typos to staff.
Okay, thank you. With that being said, there's a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. And motion carries because I don't think Joe Johnson is here. So there are 11. Motion carries 11-0. Moving on, we'll consider the subdivision committee recommendations. The first one up is sub 2020, number 20. It's a one-step final plat for Buena Vista addition. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a staff question on that item.
Okay. Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this case?
Mr. Chairman, we
Yes.
have an update on Century 2. Mary's currently trying to get them online. Apparently they're having some internet issues, but she has confirmed there are 2 people there at Century 2 currently, and there are two cases that they are interested in. And one is case number zoning case 53. The other one is zoning case number 7.
Okay.
And I'm gonna continue working with her to try and get them online.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case, the one-step final plat for Buena Vista addition? Hearing none, we'll take that one on consent. We have subdivision 2021-005, one-step final plat for Pike second edition. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, we'll take that on consent. Next is sub 2021-006, one-step final plat for EC 11th edition. Is there anyone on the commission who would like to hear this case? Hearing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, we'll take that one on consent. And Mr. Foster, you had a question on for staff on Buena Vista.
That's correct. If you'll recall, when the subdivision committee addressed this, we talked about the uses, the multifamily and the single family and duplex. I couldn't find in the staff comments that what was decided at the committee level to strike the multifamily portion of that.
Multifamily units was previously included in item D regarding the restrictive covenant, so I just removed multifamily units from that covenant. It will now state that the plat is limited to no more than 30 dwelling units, which would encompass either single family or 2 family units until a second point of access is constructed.
I just wanted to confirm that. That was my question. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to approve agenda items 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3.
It's been moved by Mr. Warren, second by Mr. Bill Johnson to approve 212223. Are there any questions on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. I just had Joe Johnson trying to call me, so I don't know if he's having trouble getting in.
Sir, I just got an email from him indicating he is having trouble getting in, so I'm going to give him a call.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next up, we have our vacation items. Starting off with vacation. Sorry. Vacation case 2021-0007. It's a city vacation of Platter's text to allow a portion of Reserve E to be transferred to an adjacent property. which is located at 10622 East Glen Gate Circle. And I believe that we do have an updated staff report on that that came after all the discussion that we had at the subcommittee meeting. So is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to recuse myself from this case. I live 2 houses down from the subject property, and I've been in communication with other residents.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, do we need to recognize those updates part of the record?
We sure can. I think that Philip is prepared to do that. Let's see if why don't we go ahead and do that? And we'll move on to the next case, Vacation 2020-0008. It's a vacation of access control on South Webb Road, located approximately 1200 block of South Webb. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case?
Yes, this is Tracy Chamberlain. I'm the owner of the Spring Clean Laundromat. I'm interested in the access point for the car wash and stuff like that.
Okay, we will hear this case then. Moving on to the next, and we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Moving on to the next case, we have a Vacation 2021 009. Vacation property located in limited commercial, located at 1544 South Webb Road. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this? Is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this? Hearing none, we'll take that one on consent.
Move to approve item 3.3.
I'll second that. So it's been moved and seconded to approve vacation case 3.3, 3.3, which is vacation 2021-009. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We can probably have the staff question. It's just a staff question, right, on the 3.1, or do you want to go ahead and hear the entire case?
No, it's more of
Just an update?
protocol question of should we have those updates for the record?
Okay. Philip, if you'd like to come up and just give us those updates, and then we'll go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon, Planning Commissioners. Philip Ziegenbergen, Planning Staff for the record. Just a brief overview for the record of what this case is. The request is to amend the platter's text to remove the uses from Reserve E so that a portion of that property can be transferred to an adjacent property owner for development. As we talked about in the subdivision committee last week, there was concern with Evergy about a primary line that they had near the property line where it abutted this reserve. Evergy and the applicant worked this last week and came to an agreement that the primary line can be moved. The applicant is agreeing to pay for it, so Evergy does not have any objection to this case anymore. So that really was the only issue, and it has been resolved through this week. The only other update was just an update to the conditions of approval to reflect that and one other thing was the applicant agreed to revise the size of their portion of the reserve. They're reducing it by 15 feet on the west side. So instead of being 25 feet from the right of way, I think it's now 40. And there was an updated exhibit that you guys received for me via email reflecting that as well. So really, we're just going to need an updated legal description from the applicant, but that can be done before this case goes to City Council so that we have the correct one to put in the vacation order should it be approved.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Philip. I move that we take this item vacation 2021-0007. We approve that. Been moved by Green, second by Nix to approve this this vacation. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And abstentions, 1. So that motion carries 10-0-1. Moving on to the public hearing items, we will hear 4.1. Item 4.2 is a conditional use 2021-0006. It's a city conditional use for 125-foot tall wireless communications facility located at 1511 West 27th Street South. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Mr. Foster, we will hear this case. Moving on to the next item is conditional 2021-0007. I believe that's one of the ones that we have somebody at Century 2. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, we will hear this case.
No, there's a correction here. I do not have anyone here for conditional use 2021-7. I do have someone here for the zoning case 2021-7.
Which
Okay.
we just approved.
What?
Okay, so
Oh, the zoning case, I'm sorry. Sorry. Okay, all right. So we're on 4.3, conditional use to amend a PO on number 3 at roughly the 1200 block of South Webb Road. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this case?
No one here at Century 2.
Is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? There's no one, so we will take item 4.3 on consent. Next, we have zoning 2021-0005. It's a city zone change from single family to limited industrial located at 1515 South Yucca Place. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case?
Mr. Chairman, I need to abstain from
Okay.
this item.
Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this case?
There's no one here for this case at Century 2.
Thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, we'll take item 4.4 on consent. Item 4.5 has been deferred. Move to item 4.6. This is the one that we have somebody at Century 2 that wants to hear the case, correct? So we will hear this case. And item 4.7 has been deferred.
Chairman, I move to approve agenda item 4.3.
And
4.4. You got to abstain, so I figured we'd do those separate.
good catch. Do I have a second on the motion?
Second, Joe.
Been moved by Mr. Warren, second by Mr. McKay to approve item 4.3. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. 11,
We have 12 now.
12, okay. Motion carries 12-0.
I'm going to move to approve item 4.4.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Warren, second by Ms. Gross, to approve item 4.4. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And all those abstaining?
Yes.
So we've got that one. This motion carries 11-01.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, yes.
Quick correction on that. Mr. McKay's.
Oh, he's on, okay,
So
so
it'll be 10:01.
so it'll be 10:01.
That's correct.
Okay.
4146.
Okay, let's go to
Vacation.
item 3.2, which is the vacation 2021-0008.
Again, good afternoon, Philip Zievenbergen for the record. Vacation 2021-08, the applicant is requesting to vacate a portion of complete access control along South Webb Road. That'd be the south 30 feet of the north 48.02 feet. Lot 1, Harrison Park, 3rd edition. The site currently has access through a access agreement on the north part of the property. If you want to go to the aerial image, Paul, we can see that a little bit better. You can see that though it's labeled as South Webb Road, but it's an access primarily for the EMS station to the east, but it is an access easement that does provide access to this undeveloped lot where this car wash is going to go. That was with Con 2021-07. That was approved on consent at this meeting. If you go to the site plan, the applicant is requesting the vacation of the access control to allow an egress drive out of the car wash. Through conversations and the discussion at the subdivision committee, traffic engineering is not in favor of a full movement drive based on the location related to the signalized intersection at Lincoln, as well as the other drive for the laundromat to the south. It does not meet the city's access management standards, which require a minimum of 400 feet away from the intersection and 200 feet away from the other drive. Therefore, traffic engineering is okay with a right in, right out configuration of that drive instead. And that was part of the staff report to the subdivision committee and part of the approval from the subdivision committee, which was a 6-0 recommendation last week. There was another comment in there by Public Works about the Southern Star gas main in the right of way of Webb Road. Really, one of the conditions of approval is that the driveway will have to be built to city standards and there won't be any design exceptions from Public Works. And so they will have to make sure that they are not in conflict with that gas line. They will just have to be in contact with the Southern Star gas company as they move forward with the design phase of it. It will also be able to potentially prohibit where any access control signs or whatever could be placed just based on the depth in relationship to the gas line. There were no real issues with that in the subdivision committee, just more of a FYI to the applicant that that is there and that Public Works would not be allowing any design exceptions if you find that there's a conflict with the gas line. Evergy and Cox have lines in the right of way. Cox's lines are on Evergy poles. They don't have any objections to the vacation, just the standard language is if there's a conflict of a pole in relation to where the drive is going to be, that a relocation of that pole will be at the applicant's expense. As I mentioned before, subdivision heard this last week, gave it a 6-0 recommendation, and I can stand for any questions.
Any questions for staff? Hearing none, if we could have the agent or applicant, you state your name, address, and you have 10 minutes.
Kirk Miller, K.E. Miller Engineering, 117 East Louis. We are fine with the staff comments. Be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for the agent?
This is Tracy Chamberlain. I'm the owner of the Spring Clean Laundromat. I'm having a hard time.
Just a minute, Mr. Chamberlain.
Okay.
I'll come to you in a second.
Okay.
Were there any questions for the agent from the commission? Hearing none. Is there anyone virtually? Tracy, would you like to address the commission? And you have 3 minutes. And if you could state your name and address, please, for the record. And unmute your mic.
Okay, I'm back. Tracy Chamberlain. And my business address is 1224 South Webb Road. And I'm the owner of the Spring Clean Laundromat that's going to be adjacent to this car wash. I'm having a hard time telling exactly where the entrance and exit for this car wash is going to be at. Is it going to be just north of my property line? That's one question. And the second question I've got is, in just looking at other car washes around town, there seems to be a bottleneck that can happen out on the road if there's no turning lane. And have we looked at that? Have we looked at the amount of traffic that goes up and down that road, and what could possibly happen if there is a bottleneck on that road of access getting into my business?
Okay. We'll have the agent address those questions. I'm going to see if there is anybody else that would like to speak to this case virtually. Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the agent, and you've got 3 minutes to, or 2 minutes, excuse me, to answer any questions or give us any rebuttal.
Okay, we actually have 2 entrances and exits. We have one on the north side of the property, then the one that will be on the south side of the property, closer to the laundromat. The one on the south side is a right in and right out. So any traffic coming from the north, which we anticipate probably the majority of the traffic, will have to use the north entrance. So they wouldn't be bottlenecking in front of the laundromat. The only way that would happen is if we stacked a lot of vehicles out on the road, and we've got about 200 feet of stacking, which is about 10 vehicles stacking on that south side on that entrance. So there's plenty of stacking when you put both entrances together. So I don't see it as being an issue. I'd be glad to answer the questions.
So there's no entrance to the car wash on the south end of the property. That's just an exit only.
It is an entrance only if you're coming from the south. If you're coming from the north, you have to go on the north side.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Foster, do you have a question?
It's for the agent.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Kirk, you mentioned the access on the north side there. On the diagram we're looking at, can you tell me how that ties up to the street system? Is there cross lot access, or how does that work?
Well, actually, our property line goes all the way across to the north side of what would be Lincoln Street there. And the access easement is for that EMS station. But we have a traffic signal there, so it's easy to get people out at that point if they need to take a left and go south on Webb. But it's also an entrance to the car wash if you're coming from the north. And if you came from the south, you could also use that one if you wanted to. But there's an in and an out. I mean, it's wide enough for 2 lanes right now, the way it's paved. And we're anticipating probably widening it a little bit to the south to even give us another lane coming in. And then they go all the way to the back of the property and turn in and then head back to the west again to enter the car wash.
I know one oddity that we noted at the committee level was it looked like an encroachment onto the laundromat property there with the pavement and stuff, but yet the right in, right out cures the whole condition, so.
And Kurt, how far north of the the laundromat driveway is that right in, right out only?
The right in, right out's at the very south line.
Very south line? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
The laundromat driveway is south of that it's at the south end of their drive, at their property.
Okay. Okay. Well, that helps.
This is again. Can I ask one more question?
I'm sorry, Tracy, your time is up. It's not a dialogue back and forth. Yes.
Not a dialogue back and forth, but I was interested if that answered his question.
Okay, if you want to go ahead and ask him.
What the agent gave us, did that answer your question, Mr.
Yeah.
Chamberlain?
The only question I had was is there going to be some kind of a barrier or a curb in between their parking lot and our parking lot?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. Are there any other questions for the agent? Hearing none, we'll bring the dialogue back to the commission for action.
I move to approve item 3.2.
It's been moved and seconded, moved by Ms. Fox to approve. It was seconded by Mr. Warren. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Moving on to our next case. Before we get started, I need to find out if, I know Ms. Miles is not here. Ms. Gross?
Yes, sir.
Were you able to review the minutes from the meeting that covered this case, or have you been able to view the video recording of this case?
Which are we talking about?
It would be the 63rd and hydraulic.
Yes, I just read those earlier.
Yes, okay, thank you very much. So with that, Mr. Philip Zevenbergen.
Again, Philip Zevenbergen for the record. Zone 2020-53 is coming before you again today. It was deferred from the February 18th meeting after a robust discussion. The outcome of the February 18th meeting was to task the applicant, or really contract buyer in this case, with developing some sort of landscaping and screening plan devised to help minimize the impact of this use to the surrounding neighborhood properties, or residential properties, I should say. He did submit that to us, you guys. They are attached on your staff report. If you haven't had a chance to review, we have them in the PowerPoint presentation. I will briefly go over them, but the contract buyer, Mr. Warren, intends to use those same slides that he submitted during his time to go over it potentially in more detail than what I have for you. Brief overview of the case for those who may be listening and are brand new is it's a zone change request from rural residential to general commercial located on the southwest corner of East Hydraulic and South Hydraulic and East 63rd. It is in Sedgwick County, even though there is the city of Wichita on a couple sides of it. The intended use is for a vehicle storage yard for boats and RVs. A vehicle storage yard is allowed to store operable vehicles for up to 72 hours. It doesn't just include recreation vehicles. It could be automobiles instead. One of the conditions of approval is that we would limit this use to just the boats and RVs as the application had suggested. The properties surrounding it are zoned primarily SF5, single family residential, with single family homes to the east, to the north, and to the south. There is some general commercial zoning to the north. The one directly at the northwest corner is vacant, but properties to the north of that do have commercial uses. It was discussed during the last meeting on the 18th that there could be potentially some nonconformities going on or some illegal activity in that they're just not in compliance with the zoning code. Property to the northeast is zone limited commercial. It was mentioned that there are owners within the Pine Bay neighborhood, which is the properties to the east, who actually own that and have owned it to prohibit commercial development as long as they own it. The protective overlay for this would limit the site to limited commercial uses, except for the one vehicle storage yard as permitted in GC. So even though we'd be recommending approval of general commercial zoning, we would be looking to really make it more basically an LC property, just as the, if property changes hands or future development, be more appropriate types of uses, considering the residential around there, understanding that there could be things done to the vehicle storage yard to minimize the impact and intensity with the surrounding residential uses that you see. Going into the plan that the applicant submitted, if you want to go to those slides, Paul, give him a second here. Let's go to the next one. The applicant attached the site plan, and it's what you see on the screen here. He has several angles that I'll let him go through. You can kind of get the gist of it from what we're seeing on your screen. That's looking at it as if you're looking southwest. South Hydraulic would be on the left-hand side of the screen. East 63rd is on the right-hand side of the screen. The applicant is proposing 6 buildings, 3 of which would have storage bays on both sides. The buildings have roofs and are enclosed on 3 sides with open fronts. The plan shows that no open fronts will be directly in front of either street right-of-way, except indirectly when viewed from the opening off of South Hydraulic. The plan shows one entrance off of South Hydraulic. The plat does allow an opening along that area, so there's no issues as long as he's putting the driveway. The plat allows him to. The applicant, the buildings along South Hydraulic, you can see there, are going to be acting as solid screening, like it would be a fence. These are enclosed buildings, and then you also see the landscape berm in front of that. The applicant states that the buildings would be set back 50 feet from both street rights of way. Along East 63rd Street, the plan shows an 8-foot solid screening fence in between the buildings. The building walls themselves would then be acting as a solid screening instead. The plan does not show complete solid screening along the west or the south property lines. Those would be the ones furthest in the picture from you. That would have to be the case since it's commercially zoned property abutting residential zone property. That's in section 4B3 of the Unified Zoning Code. That would have to be there and in place as part of coming into compliance with the zoning code. Make sure I'm not missing anything. The applicant requests that the fence along East 63rd be allowed to be 45 feet away from the street right away, but the buildings would still be 50 feet. So on the right-hand side of this image here, you see the buildings there. They would be where they are placed, but having the fence be a little bit closer to the street by 5 feet to allow for additional ability for movements of vehicles, whether they're turning in, backing in, helping out the maneuverability of vehicles as they're trying to get the boats or RVs in and out of the storage buildings. Fences are permitted within applicable setbacks, so that's not any issue there. If the case is approved, the site plan will have to be revised to reflect the required screening along the west and south property lines and the adjusted location of the fence along the north property line. Regarding the landscaping, the applicant proposes a berm that varies in height between 4 and 6 feet with natural contours along South Hydraulic and East 63rd, with landscaping planted on top of the berm. The plan shows 28 trees along South Hydraulic, which equates to a spacing of approximately 20 feet. The plan shows 48 trees along East 63rd, which equates to a spacing of approximately 10 feet. The applicant states that he plans to have a mixture of shade and ornamental trees in addition to a mixture of shrubs to help fill the spacing in between the trees. Properties in Sedgwick County are not required to adhere to the Wichita Landscape Ordinance. However, it was talked about in the last meeting that we could use it as a guide regarding landscape buffers. If you were to use it as a guide, it talks about having trees spaced every 40 feet apart. For landscape buffers, the properties along East 63rd Street is approximately 450 feet. So with the property along South Hydraulic is about 590 feet. So with the dimensions of the property and the proposed landscaping, it's about 2 times as dense as what would be required by the ordinance along South Hydraulic, and almost 4 times as dense along East 63rd Street than what would be required by the ordinance when you count the trees and the shrubs combined. Because in the landscape ordinance, it could just be 1 tree every 40 feet. You could also, I think it's, you can, there's a combination of there. You could replace X number of bushes as opposed to 1 tree, but he's doing both. So he's really beefing up in comparison to what the ordinance would be requiring. That is the new information we have. I can go through, if you would like, I can go through some of the details of the staff report. I will go through the approval and these conditions of approval just for everyone's reminding of what the conditions are, so that you have them in your mind at the time of making a motion if you need to adjust what they say or add to them. And I can also go through the findings as well, since that is really the basis for what our approval recommendation is. So we are recommending approval subject to protective overlay. Usage would be limited to those permitted by right in limited commercial, in addition to the vehicle storage yard, which is permitted in general commercial. The vehicle storage yard would be limited to the storage of operable boats and recreational vehicles only, and in no case shall it be used for sales, repair work, dismantling, or mechanical servicing of any vehicles or equipment, or for storage of materials and supplies. The storage area and all entrances or exits shall be surfaced with an all-weather surface that meets the approval of the director of the Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department, and shall be maintained in good condition and free of weeds, trash, and other debris. Visual screening in areas adjacent to residential zoning districts shall be provided to protect adjacent properties from light, debris, and noise, to preserve the adjacent property values. In no case shall screening be less than required by section 4B 1 through 3. That's what we talked about for the west and south property lines. What he has proposed for the property lines along the right of way, the solid screening is in compliance based on what he proposes to do. He'll need to provide a revised screening and landscape plan based on what we kind of already discussed, or potentially of any additions or subtractions that are set through the meeting here. If outdoor lighting is provided, lighting shall be in compliance with the standards in section 4B4. It was discussed at the previous meeting that if there is any outdoor lighting, he would make it motion detected to avoid it just being on all the time. So it would only be on and active when there's movement going on the property, to minimize any light pollution going across the property lines needlessly if there's no activity on the property. And then finally, the site shall comply with all compatibility requirements within the zoning code for setbacks, height, and noise. Since his, that's something that would be reviewed during the landscape plan, those compatibility setbacks related to residential zoning. Given the size of this property, I think he would meet the maximum compatibility setback of 25 feet on the south and the west property lines, but we would review that as part of his site plan. Zoning and character are the findings for our recommendation. Zoning and character of the neighborhood. Properties to the north are in the city of Wichita, and as I said before, general commercial and single family residential. The general commercial land is vacant and has never been developed. However, further north we did see that there was some development on there, but potentially not in compliance with the code. The residential lots are large lot single family residential along a private lake. Properties to the east are single family residential on a golf course. Property northeast of the intersection is limited commercial. As we said before, it's undeveloped. Property to the south is a single family residential, and it has a large lot single family home. And then same thing on the west side is large lot single family residential as well. Staff's opinion is that permitting additional unrestricted general commercial in the area is inappropriate. However, the community investments plan and even the South Wichita Hayesville area plan identifies the southwest corner as appropriate for commercial development. So with the protective overlay, we feel that is appropriate use, limiting it to limited commercial, and with the beefing up of the landscaping and the screening, it should minimize and mitigate potential negative impacts with surrounding properties. What the property can be used for as it's zoned now, the property is zoned rural residential. The property could be developed with a new single family dwelling, could also be replatted into multiple lots with a 2-acre lot size for single family. This type of use is permitted by conditional use, but in rural residential, but it have to be accessory to a primary dwelling instead. That's why he's going for the zone change, because there's no houses on there right now. If we remove these restrictions and rezone it, what could be the detrimental impacts on neighboring properties? Though the intended use of the vehicle storage is deemed appropriate, other permitted uses within general commercial would be detrimental to the growing residential development in the immediate area. The provisions of the protective overlay and the revised landscape and screening plan will minimize and mitigate the negative impacts of this commercial development on adjacent residential development. The property has never been developed. Over time, it's always just been used as agriculture up until this point. As I mentioned before, the comprehensive plan identifies this as residential, but historically the intersection of 2 arterial streets has been deemed appropriate for commercial development. And as I said before, the South Wichita Hayesville area plan adopted in 2002 identifies the southwest corner as appropriate for commercial. It also has a specific mention in the plan that they're looking to develop more commercial uses in the area. And the development of the property would not have any detriment on community facilities or resources. Do you guys want to go through the site pictures again, or should we move on to since we reviewed them last time, do you want to see them again, or do we want to move on to the contract buyer's testimony?
I think we're good.
Okay.
Yep.
So Paul, I would just leave it here for you to go through with him, and then, yeah, Scott.
I do have some supplemental comments to the staff report. And just in general, as usual with cases, I just want to emphasize that on the Planning Commission, when you make a motion, you should include findings from the Golden factors to support your motion. And what that means is that if you move to approve per the staff recommendations of the protective overlay, we have made findings in the factors to support that. And you might emphasize or comment on ones that support your motion. However, if you would like to take a different action and make a different motion, I would encourage you to share different conclusions on some of the golden factors and that would support your motion.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for staff? Yes, Mr. Warren.
I've got a staff question for people, and depending on the response, I may have a question then for the commissioners. Since we had a fairly robust discussion on this the last time, do we need to open the discussion to all of the aspects of this, or can we limit that to the revisions of landscaping, buffering, and berms and that type of thing?
You know, Justin Wagner, Assistant County Councilor. Commissioner Warren, I think that's a very good question. One thing I would say that could be appropriate here, this question came up at the end of the hearing last time in terms of what you might do. And I believe the chairman had commented on possibly having comments be just about the new materials. What might be appropriate in this particular case, because your bylaws do speak to a certain amount of time per person, it might be appropriate to have a motion to suspend the bylaws and maybe state in the motion if the intent is to have the comments be limited to a particular aspect of this, perhaps I think what you discussed in terms of screening or protective overlay. You know, maybe the motion could also allot the amount of time for speakers. I think it might be easiest to just allot the amount of time per how the bylaws do allot that for a regular public hearing. And part of the reason, Commissioner, that I mentioned that is because the public hearing had closed early. And so this would be some supplemental comments, but I think in the interest of due process, it'd be fair to give both the applicant's agent, or contract buyer in this case, and also the surrounding property owners the opportunity to opine on this information. But again, I would think that it would be appropriate to try to limit the context of those comments to this new information.
We could either restrict or expand the amount of time.
I think you could. The bylaws would say that you can suspend the rules if there's a motion to suspend. And then I think really in this case, the motion maker could explain, what the comments would be and how many minutes you would give each speaker, or you could just say per the normal approach allowed under the bylaws, and limit it perhaps to the content of what it would be about. Because I do think it's appropriate in this case. The question had arisen a month ago, and I think it's the same analysis, to give the neighbors the opportunity or any other interested parties to comment upon that. But I think if you are going to give the agent an opportunity, you give them likewise some time similar to your bylaws. I think it's a pretty fair balance in terms of giving each side an opportunity to be heard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Foster.
Philip, I'm looking at finding number 5, conformance of the requested change to the adopted or recognized comprehensive plan. The South Wichita Hayesville area plan, that's a county plan and not from the city of Hayesville. Is that correct?
That is correct. It was done through our department.
Okay, so it's 2002 and it's the old information. And I'm recalling when we worked on the 2015 community investments plan, the very careful discussion about these various intersections in and around the city. And this one was clearly residential in the discussion. And so I'm not fully confirming the idea that commercial is the definite route to go on that. But anyway, I just want to point out that the 2002 is older information, whereas we have the newer information with the current plan. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Warren.
I'm going to attempt to make a motion here. Scott, if I mess up here, you got some ideas, you might correct me on this, but we move to suspend our bylaws in regarding to discussion to reduce the time that the applicant has to discuss from 10 minutes to 5 minutes, to reduce the time that the public can speak out from 3 minutes to 2 minutes, in that all parties to the best of their ability keep their comments to regard of the changes that have been brought forth since the last time that we had this before us, which would be screening, any kind of screening and buffering to the property. All other times remain the same.
I'll second. So we have a motion on the floor to limit the agent or applicant's speaking time to 5 minutes, the public's speaking time to 2 minutes, and to limit the discussion on new information that has been and will be brought to us today with regards to the landscaping plan. So that's the motion. It's been seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. So are there any other questions for staff at this point from the commission? Hearing none, we will go to the agent or applicant, and you have 5 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Cale Warren. My address is 2012 North Peppercorn Road, Derby, Kansas. So limiting myself to new information, I would like to talk a couple of points against what the public was concerned about last time, if I may. Firstly, public had stated that they are concerned that I will leave the area at a later date, leaving an empty lot zoned as general commercial for any business to come in and take over the land. However, I have signed a long-term lease with Mr. Fox of 20 years with multiple options to extend 10 years and options to purchase. I'm a lifelong resident of the Wichita area and all of my family roots are here. I do not yet have children of my own, but my wife and I plan to in the near future and plan for them to attend school in the area. I assure you that neither myself nor my business will be leaving the area anytime soon. Also, the MAPC has suggested rezoning to limited commercial, not general commercial, with the protective overlay. So I think that should be taken into consideration as well. Secondly, I recognize that nearby storage units exist, but not a single one offers a storage solution similar to mine. As shown in the graphics, my intent is to offer a hybrid between open storage and fully enclosed storage that also offers a price range in between. The public has made comments about the lack of demand and need for this, but I have been in contact with several nearby units and they have wait lists. Being that some folks will want a hybrid solution at a mid-range price and other businesses have a wait list, I expect to see a significant demand for storage of this kind in the area. Thirdly, the public has addressed concerns of security. I too am concerned about the security of the facility as my own equipment will be stored there from day one and beyond. I also worry about the security of everyone's belongings and the integrity of my business. I plan to have a secure fence with a video security system in place that will notify myself and law enforcement, as well as sound an alarm. The alarm would of course abide by Section 4B of the Unified Zoning Code. Finally, I would like to take a couple minutes to speak to my slides previously presented by Philip. Philip, I'll start by saying thank you. You did a wonderful job of presenting the information here. As you can see from the slide here, this is, as Philip said previously, 6 buildings, 2 of which will be facing hydraulic and be closed on that side with solid screening walls. The other 4 will have open stalls, pardon me, the 3 in the middle will have open walls on either side, but none of which will be open to directly either street. The final building will be closed on the side towards the residential lots to the west. Secondly, the berm that I have drawn there, I intend to have natural contours varying from the minimum requested in the previous meeting of 4 feet to a maximum of 6 feet in height. There will be vegetation along the top of the berms. Philip had told me in an email that the city ordinance requires 1 shade tree or 2 ornamental trees every 40 feet. For the sake of simplicity, I had just drawn everything as a shade tree and done them 10 feet across, which doubles the city ordinance per request on the north side, and then just meets the city ordinance request on the east side. But also I will fill in with bushes and shrubs along there as well to help appease the visibility. The fencing in between, as Philip stated, will be 8 feet tall, and I will redraw the site plan with a fence on the southwest corner there for future reference. The fence along the north, I would like to extend to a 45-foot setback rather than 50-foot setback, as Philip stated, just for enhanced maneuverability for customers within the storage unit. There are a few slides here. If you wouldn't mind clicking through them slowly, just to let everyone kind of see a little bit better, get a better representation of kind of what this looks like. Next slide, please. This would be from the north looking south. Next slide, please. Looking in west at the entrance. Next slide. Looking northwest. Next slide. Okay. All right, thank you for clicking through those, and thank you for your time, Council.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant here? Yes, Mr. Foster.
I'm curious, Ms. Warren, what type of grass do you see being used as your finished surface on the berming?
I haven't given the specific type of grass a lot of consideration. I know I use fescue here at my own residence, and I like it a lot. I've also had Bermuda in the past. Bermuda spreads really well, so that would be something that I could take into consideration as well to help cover that berm as quickly as possible.
Just a suggestion is think about the maintenance and costs related to whatever decision you make on that. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions from staff or the applicant? I have just one. You're saying that the fence is going to be 45 feet from the center line of the street or from the property line?
No, it would be 45 feet from the property line, sir.
Okay, that's what I thought you said, but I wanted to make sure. Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll open it up to public comment, keeping in mind that you will have 2 minutes, and to limit your comments to items and issues that have just been brought forward to us with regards to the landscaping plan. First off, we'll go to Century 2. Is there anyone in Century 2 that would like to address the commission on this case?
Chairman, there's no comment from Century 2 on this case.
Okay, thank you. We will now open it up to people that are online virtually. If you could state your name and address for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Well, since I'll take my 2 minutes. Paul Davis, 6417 South Madison Court, Pine Bay homeowner for 22 years and former Wichita District three-member, recently term limited out. I did not realize that we were going to be limited in our remarks, but one thing I would like to point out, you keep referring to the South Wichita Sedgwick County Planning Department report, which I happen to have. I was a correspondent when that was made, and I believe it was 1998. 2020 at the, 2000 at the very latest, and none of the commercial stuff that it suggests in this corridor has happened. There has been no commercial development from Meridian to Oliver on 63rd, and very little from 47th, clear to the county line on hydraulic. What there actually has come in has been more blighted area. We've got 2 businesses in the area where providers are living in. But looking at their document, which one you have on the screen here in particular, the evergreen trees or whatever appear to be arborvitae, which typically don't get over maybe 5 feet high. The buildings also, I think the perspective's a little strange. They kind of look like the 50s automobile print ads where the cars look a lot lower and longer and wider than they actually would be. These buildings actually don't look quite tall enough to house RVs in this perspective anyway. So, and most of them appear to be 4-sided buildings, and they're proposing 3-sided, such as tractor sheds, for instance. And I don't see how they'd store motorhomes pulled behind the fifth wheels in such a short sidewall structure. So I see that as a little bit misleading. So I guess I'll close quickly and say I can't see any rational reason to approve this unjustified, inappropriate, and as you can surely see by now, almost universally unwelcome request. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Davis, for your testimony. Is there anyone that had on the commission that would have a question for the speaker? Hearing none, thank you again for your testimony. Next speaker, please.
This is Steve Howard. I live at 1725 East Pine Bay, Wichita. I heard the comment that the buildings were going to be open on 2 sides, not enclosed on 3 sides on some of these buildings. They appear to be pole barns, not commercial grade type of buildings, more of a barn that my grandpa would put hay in. and not the type you would do have in a commercial development. And they don't appear to be a steel construction. They appear to be just basically telephone poles with aluminum on them. Thank you for your time, and that's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Are there any questions of the speaker from the commission? Yes, Ms. Fox.
Mr. Howard, what's your reaction to the landscaping suggestions for the perimeter? Do you
The
have
landscape, yeah, the landscaping isn't too bad of an idea. I think it's appropriate to have any type of development across the road where Spray Lake is located. Their housing addition even has berms on it. My only concern is that the berms and fencing will never be built. Just the buildings will go up and will be left without the berms and the trees and landscaping. And that will never happen. And we'll end up with this property looking like two properties that are north of this location, which are abandoned cars and barrels. And that's my concern.
Thank you.
Okay. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. This is David Edwards. I am the president of the Pine Bay Homeowners Association. My address is 6437 South Madison Court in Wichita. We can add landscaping all we want to this site, and maybe that makes it appropriate in some people's eyes. It is the general consensus of our homeowners association and our fellows at Spray Lake that this commercial property just does not meet with the general consensus of the area. That for 25 years, by my count, we've put in about 173 residential properties, knowing that this parcel would be rural residential or large lot residential. To let us involve, by a short count and a conservative account, about $15 million of residential development between our two subdivisions over 25 years, and then to come in and pull the rug out from under us and change the rules and allow a commercial development is just completely unpalatable. And again, we can add as many trees and berms to it as we want. We just don't feel that commercial property belongs there at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Are there any questions of the speaker? Yes, Ms. Fox.
Mr. Edwards, I have a question about the perimeter residential lots on the east side of Hydraulic. It looks to me like there's 5 residential lots that are vacant that are immediately adjacent to Hydraulic and across from this property. Is that accurate, or are any of those developed?
You are accurate. There are, I believe, 10 or 11 remaining lots to be along 63rd Street South and Hydraulic. 5 of those lots would look forward facing directly into this commercial development.
And can you tell me how many of those 5, how long those 5 have been available for sale or available for development?
Since 1985, I believe. And then we just recently had a developer purchase 10 of those 11 lots, and I believe that was within the last 2 years. And I believe they're in the process of planning to get a road in there because we can't develop until the road is built. Last numbers I heard were about 1.3 million for roads and infrastructure. And I can only imagine that he would not be as interested in putting $1.3 million into 5 lots which face a commercial development.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the speaker? Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Is there anyone else virtually that would like to address the commission on this item?
Yes, sir. Dan and Jill Morado, 6463 South Madison Court in the Pine Bay Estates.
Okay.
I have the question about what's the paving or drive area is going to be covered with. Is it gravel or is it paving? If it's going to be gravel, it's a great deal of area that could pull up a lot of dust, which if you know that area of town, It's either blowing from the south or the west at times, and that could really drift off into our development of Pine Bay. So I'd like to have that addressed as well. Otherwise, I still am in opposition of this move to rezone this area. So just for the fact of that, I just want to state that as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone on the commission that has a question for Mr. or Mrs. Morato? Hearing none, thank you. Is there anyone else virtually that would like to address the commission on this case?
Yeah. Yes, my name is Guy Gentry. I live at 6433 South Madison Court. I'm also Lake Director for the Pine Bay Homeowners Association. One of my biggest concerns is the entranceways from 63rd Street access into this area. Right now, we're experiencing a very largely increased amount of traffic at this intersection. Roughly one serious accident there probably every 2 weeks. I don't know about injury accidents. I don't have the actual stats in front of me. I think that should be researched, because adding to this corridor that goes to the casino area is going to be a problem. The road next down right there, just south of 63rd Street, goes to 2 lanes south to the bridge. The bridge has been made wide enough for 4 lanes, and I'm sure at some point the commission's going to want to enlarge the street to 4 lanes. And that's also going to give us a bit of a problem when we go to build the siding for the additional 10 lots that are currently vacant over on the opposite side of the street. I think we need to do something to be sure that the access is correct. And right now, that access off of Hydraulic is going to be inferior, and it may actually get stopped whenever that road gets improved to the 4 lanes. I am in opposition to this going on to our corner for all the reasons stated actually prior. The 2 zone general commercial lots north have not complied. We need to find out if there's an ordinance officer or someone that can go in and look at these and maybe help bring those into compliance. Other than that, I don't see that we need that particular type of business in this area. There's not a real need for it. And there are at least 5 to 7 storage areas surrounding that I think are probably adequate for what the needs are in the area. I'm the person who actually got all the petitions from all the homeowners. I wanted to know what their feelings were on it. And when I hear 80 of 82 that I went to personally were in absolute opposition to this, I think you need to listen to your homeowners. We have some influence there, and we're not afraid to use it if we can. We've got to do something. And I think what you'll find is, even if this gets passed, it will still be in opposition. We'll still be carrying petitions to get it stopped.
Thank you, Mr. Gentry.
And my time is up, and I yield.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Yes, Ms. Fox.
Sir, did you revisit the folks who signed the petition to inquire as to their feedback on the landscaping that's being proposed as a buffer?
The ones that I have talked to, I have not talked to all of them. Of course, there were at least 80. The ones that I have talked to, they're not pleased with the berming. It's not palatable because it's not going to match anything else in the area. It won't be even close to what's done at Spray Lake. We don't have berms on our side, but I don't know if that might change when this road goes in or not. That's way ahead of us. And we have been annexed into the city of Wichita. So we're no longer part of the Hayesville zoning or planning other than indirectly. And I yield back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for the speaker? Hearing none, is there anyone else virtually that would like to address the commission on this?
Yes.
My name is Patricia Hutchinson. I'm a property owner at 1921 East Pine Bay and have been there since 1986. And I just want to, I am one of the petitioners that our Pine Bay Homeowners Association president has alluded to. And I just want to say that I do oppose this change at this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sue. Is there anyone virtually that would like to, or is anyone on the commission that would like to ask Ms. Hutchinson any questions? Hearing none. Is there anyone else? Mr. Capon, looks like you may be up.
Yes, Dave Capon, 6439 South Madison Court, Pine Bay Estates. Even looking at the new drawings with the trees and the berming, I am still adamantly opposed to this. This will be detrimental to the area that we live in because it is residential, and I don't feel like this is the proper use for that land. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to ask the speaker any questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next speaker. Name and address for the record, please. You have 2 minutes.
Hello. Brian Scott. Hello.
Yes.
Hello, this is Brian Scott at 6740 South Hydraulic Drive. I'm a residential homeowner in the Pine Bay area. We just purchased our house in the summer of 2019 expressively because of the amenities of the area, and it is a residential area. So for the previous reasons outlined, I agree with the speakers in opposing this change. That is all.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions for the speaker? Hearing none. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Ladina Stefan, 1100 East 63rd Street South. I just have a couple questions, and it's kind of about the landscape and berm. So when this all begins, what size will the trees be? How long to full growth? Because I'm sure it won't cover anything in the beginning. Who's going to be responsible in the county to make sure that this is done? And would it be done before the buildings go up? Because that would be the preference. And overall, I am opposed. I'm opposed for all reasons stated. I don't need to restate. So those are my questions to you and the applicant.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Hearing none. Is there anyone else that would like to address the commission on this?
Yes, my name is Miranda.
Sorry,
Britton.
go ahead.
Sorry. My name is Miranda Britton, and I am at 1500 East 63rd Street South. I will be directly across from the property in discussion. I am also the treasurer and secretary for Spray Lake Homeowners Association. I myself being a homeowner and also on behalf of Spray Lake, we oppose for all the reasons that have been discussed previously. I do have a concern and a question about the height of the berm. Right now, that lot itself is lower than the street, and I'm curious, is that berm going to be off of street level, or where will that berm basically begin? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else that would like to address the commission? Is this, you have 2 minutes?
Yes. Yes, this is Judith Larson. No, I'm not. I think there's two of us talking at one time.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. So
this is Judy Larson.
Annette, I'm sorry. State your name and address for the record, please.
Judy Larson and Rick Larson. We live at 25 East Pine Bay. And for all the reasons talked about, we also oppose it. We've been out here 22 years and have seen areas around here deteriorate that haven't come in compliance with what they said they were going to do, that were zoned light commercial or whatever. So we just want to go on the record that both of us, Rick and Judy Larson, are opposing this change to our area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Hearing none. Next speaker, please.
My name is Karen Cohen, and I live at 6429 South Madison Court. And basically, you know, everybody has said everything that I could think of, but, you know, I think that there are many other properties that could be developed in the South Wichita area. And I think that it would destroy the charm of our properties here on the golf course. We've only lived here for 4 years, and we have enjoyed the residential area here, and, you know, the golf course and everything. But I really would like to say that my husband and I, James and Karen Cohen, and my mother, Florine Rader, also oppose this change. Thank you.
And thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions for the speaker? Hearing none, if we could, is there anyone else that would like to address the commission on this case?
Yes, I would like to address it. My name is Randy McCleve, and my wife Vicki is here. We've lived in Pine Bay Estates for over 25 years, almost 30 years. And I don't think the gentleman that's planning this development has any idea whatsoever about what it's going to take to maintain this landscaping that he's proposing. We have a 50,000 square foot lawn, and we worked really hard in it. And believe me, it's going to take a lot of effort. I haven't heard anything about how they're going to handle the septic or sewage situation there. I would expect that they would have to have restrooms, and I hope they're not just going to stand out by the building. We're very concerned about it. Vicki and I are definitely opposed to the zoning change. We got enough problems with the two areas just north of there, and I can't imagine what the people at Spray Lake think about that mess with the barrels and all the cars. So no, Randy and Vicki McCleve, 6525 South Madison, definitely oppose. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCleve. Are there any questions for the speaker? Hearing none, is there anyone else who would like to speak to the commission on this?
Yes, this is Jack Whitney. I live at 6550 South Madison, and I've lived here for 25 years. And for the reasons that were previously mentioned, I would agree with them on opposing this change from residential to commercial. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitney. Are there any questions for the speaker? Hearing none, is there anyone else virtually that would like to address the commission on this?
Yes. This is Brandon Clark, 1212 East 63rd Street South in the Spray Lake Edition. On the previous meeting, it was proposed by council. Not only was the applicant supposed to propose it to the HOA beforehand, but it was also recommended to follow the guidelines such as the SAMs out northwest and the Fox Ridge Edition, in which I do believe that they were required for 6-foot minimum trees, solid surface screening, and irrigation. So with that said, I don't think that they've proposed any of that to anyone, and I believe they've been very vague as far as tree height, lack of irrigation, and the screening itself. Solid surface, anything short of that obviously requires constant upkeep.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clark. Any questions for the speaker? Hearing none, is there anyone else virtually that would like to address the commission on this case?
Yes. My name is Marvin Steffen, 1100 East 63rd South in Spray Lake. My concern is who's going to enforce all these upgrades and stuff to his berms and this and that before it's ever done, because I've been there for over 20 years and I've seen those two light commercial, general commercial just on the north side of hydraulic go from not a bad looking place to total crap, and we can get nobody to actually do anything about it. So who do we contact when this guy doesn't do what he's supposed to do?
Okay.
I'm totally opposed to this.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Steffen? Hearing none, is there anyone else who would like to address the commission on this?
Annette Lowe, 1101 East 61st Street South. Two things that I don't think have been brought up is, is there a budget for this? Because I can't imagine me having a 3-acre lot and trying to landscape it over the last 12 years, that it's feasible to put all this in. From a cost perspective, it seems pretty prohibitive. And then the other thing I'd like to mention is that one of the benefits to living out here is that we get a lot of wildlife, and any commercial business that comes in is going to inhibit that. Deer, fox, whatever, coyotes. And that's kind of why we've chosen to live out here. So opposed.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lowe. Any questions for the speaker? Hearing none, is there anyone else who would like to address the commission on this case?
Yes, my name's Elaine Mullinack. I live at 6413 South Madison Court in Pine Bay Estates. I'm definitely 100% opposed for the huge laundry list of different reasons that have been given. I would like to believe that my voice as a property owner is going to be heard and appreciated by the board. I agree with what's previously been said in the fact that you can put a berm and a bunch of trees and a bunch of bushes anywhere to make it look pretty. But for me, I have almost 20 years of insurance experience with an emphasis on specialty vehicles like boats and RVs. These storage facilities are huge hotbeds for criminal activity. People know that it's just sitting there for the taking. These places are broken into all of the time. And I would like to know what he feels he has done differently for his proposed security features that are so much better and different than all of the other places around that are available. It doesn't fit here. All of these property owners should be able to be heard. We don't want this in our neighborhood. I want him to find a place where he can be successful. It's just not here.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Hearing none, we could have, is there anyone else virtually that would like to address the commission on?
Yes, this is Eldon Nice, 6745 South Grove Court. I'm also in Pine Bay. It's beyond me why have a residential property there and they can't access a road to put it and make them put an expensive road in, and then you vote it commercial and they have access in and out. That is not right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Anyone want to have any questions for the speaker?
No, I just don't want it there.
Hearing none, is there anyone else virtually that would like to address the commission on this case?
Yes.
Name and address, please.
Ann Nice, 6745 South Grove Court. For the reasons that have been outlined, I agree with all of the speakers
in opposing this change. There are many places they could go other than on that property. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Hearing none, is there anyone else virtually that would like to address the commission on this? Hearing none, we will turn the meeting back over to the applicant. You've heard several concerns, and it is now your turn to respond to those concerns. You have 2 minutes to address those.
Thank you, Council. I would also like to say thank you to all of the public for addressing your concerns. I've written down a majority of the questions, but I'm sure I haven't captured all of them. The first question was about the surface. I do intend for it to be gravel. Due to the nature of the traffic, I don't propose there'll be a lot of dust due to the fact that everybody will be doing less than 5 miles an hour. When will the berm be done? There's dirt work that has to be done before the buildings can go up anyway, so the berm will be done right away. As far as vegetation goes, that will be done simultaneously with the buildings, is my prediction. One of the questions was on berm height. I can certainly set that to be the 4 to 6 feet from the level of the street. I think that's perfectly doable. One person raised a question about sewage and restrooms. I do not intend to have any sewage or restrooms on the property. People are going to be there. They're going to drop off their trailer. They're going to leave within 5 minutes. So I think there's zero need for that. And then one person raised the question of budget. As far as the dirt is concerned, there's already dirt there on the land that I have to do work with anyway. So that is a limited effect to my budget. And as far as trees and stuff go, I've worked that in, and it's not a killer to the project. So I believe that addresses all of the questions that I've written. So thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you. And we do have some questions for you from the commission only. Ms. Fox?
Could you address the issue of watering this berm and your budget for maintaining it going forward? How you plan to manage that?
I have considered the cost of a well system as well as a sprinkler system that would provide adequate water along the berm for grass and the tree vegetation as well.
Okay. And yes, Mr. Foster?
Warren, one of the concerns brought up was the issue of traffic and where your entrance is showing there on the east side. And perhaps staff might have to look into this. Should that drive be shifted further southward with anticipation of long-term development of this roadway?
I have not drawn this up with the plat in front of me, so I don't know exactly where the drive is platted, but certainly that entrance can be moved. It would have to be determined prior to building the buildings, of course.
Yeah, the staff report has the plat in it, so when it was platted, County Public Works looked at access to this property. It was platted with one drive access permitted. Give me 1 second here. 30-foot opening along South Hydraulic, 252 feet south of the center line of the intersection. And that is the only place on the plat that is afforded. And so if it was platted, that means it was reviewed by County Public Works, since it's on the county side of the road, as deemed appropriate location from the intersection. I'm sure they took into consideration the future expansion of the road if possible, but it definitely took into consideration traffic counts and the distance from the intersection as to not be allowed closer. As for putting it further back, I don't know what they assessed. Obviously, there's a drive to the property to the south of this one, and I'm sure that came into consideration, but the ability to move it south could potentially be in the future, but if it's platted at this location, I don't see through the building and construction aspect of this project, them coming by and saying, well, now you need to move it, because that's where they platted it.
Okay. All right. Mr. Foster, you had another question or two?
Philip, the plat document we have in our report shows the 30-foot, 200 and, I don't know if that's 50 feet or something south of the intersection. Then there's another 30 feet clear down in the southeast corner. Would that be for drive allowance as well?
Knowing how it's labeled, that you're right, that I missed that, I apologize. You're right, there looks like to be another affording of a 30-foot drive on the very south property line, according to the plat. I missed that in the initial review.
Michael, I have a question.
Yeah, Rob.
For the developer, one of the homeowners was questioning what type of security system he was going to install. Could he address that, please?
Sure. I have spoken to a security company. I would have a series of cameras around the property, specifically at the entrance, the corners of the property, corners of the fences, looking down the fence lines. I would also have an alarm system to deter any intruders. And one of the features that I would like to include would automatically alert law enforcement as well as myself. So, and I only live in Derby, so I'm just about 2 miles from this property, and I could be there within minutes.
Okay. Is the entrance, is it a gated entrance with like a keypad, or how are you going to operate that?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay.
And each user would have their own PIN, and I intend to have a notification for every PIN that's entered, so I would know at which time who's coming and going at all times.
Okay.
Thank you, Rob. Are there any questions from the commission to the applicant?
This is Joe Johnson.
Yeah, Joe.
I had a question for the applicant. He may have said, but does he, I have two really, does he intend to use a sprinkler system? Is my first one.
I'm sorry, you cut out really bad. Can you repeat your question, please?
You intend to use a sprinkler system for the lawn?
Yes, yes, that's correct.
Okay, and the second question was what is the street side facade of the buildings material?
The parking lot area would be gravel.
I'm talking about the building.
Underneath the building would be gravel as well.
No, the facade, the surface of the building, the vertical
surface.
surface.
I'm sorry. It would be metallic, aluminum or tin.
Okay, so there's no brick anywhere. And
that's correct.
And I assume going by the city landscape standards, you would have a certain tree diameter that you would live with.
Yes, sir. I would follow city ordinances as closely as I can.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Are there any, yes, Mr. Foster?
Just a follow-up question related to the architecture. As mentioned, these are just going to be pole barns. What type of roofing material are you considering, Mr. Warren?
It would be the same metallic material.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the applicant from the commission? Yes,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. McKay?
I'd like to ask, most of these that I've seen, they had some type of a guard system. You got cameras and all that, but place like they go into daytime or nighttime type guard system. I don't know if he's going to do that or not. It was never asked.
Mr. Warren, did you hear that?
Vaguely, talking about a guard system.
Like a guard house or a place for this, all this stuff to go to. Most
Uh,
places
that-
have kind of a little shed there, somebody there or there like 10 or 15, 20 hours a day or something to that effect.
I have not planned for that, no.
Okay. All right, any other questions for the applicant from the commission? Hearing none, we'll bring the discussion back to the commission for action. Yes, Mr. Foster?
Philip, staff question. The use here in limited commercial with the protective overlay, this seems pretty benign. My question is, what other uses in limited commercial would be more intense?
That's a very broad question.
In the past, I could look up in their zoning
Right.
book, and I don't have it with me. So.
Right, and I don't have mine with me either.
Mr. Wagner's coming to your rescue.
Oh, Mr. Yeah, go right.
No, I was gonna say, if you want to look at
Oh. Come on, you don't want to look at the zoning code? If you would afford me a minute here, just to kind of look this through.
I'll go ahead and just mention for discussion is, I always come back to, is it an appropriate zoning district for this property? And so I want to understand if for unknown reasons this goes away, what could potentially occur there?
Just examples, you'd have a commercial parking area, so parking lot is permitted in limited commercial. You can have event centers, you can have nightclubs in the city or county if they follow the supplemental use regulations, which have distance requirements related to residential zoning, church, school, stuff like that. So those aren't permitted by right necessarily. For conditional use, you can do recreation and entertainment outdoor. So that would take another zoning action. You can have vehicle repair limited on that site with limited commercial zoning. Warehouse self-storage by conditional use. Asphalt and concrete plant as an industrial manufacturing use. Manufacturing can go in here by conditional use. These are all conditional uses, so I won't mention those because they would take separate zoning actions. I apologize. Agricultural sales and service, depending on what that would entail with sales and service of ag equipment, is permitted in limited commercial.
That gives me a good
Does that give you an idea? I apologize, and potential subjective question as to what's more intense than anything else, but it's looking for things that might generate more traffic or have more of a busy nature to it. But looks like Ms. Fox is giving you the use matrix to look off of.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yes, Mr. Warren?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sometimes we get so buried in the trees, we can't see the forest. And so I'm looking at this and thinking, okay, what are the possible uses for this property and whether this is the right kind of use? What this is not is a property that would lend itself well to residential property based on the traffic and the proven track record of over 25 years of availability across the street or on this property to develop. there's been lots of opportunities for other properties to develop, but this one certainly has not. And the same thing can be said for the properties that face out onto Hydraulic and 63rd Street are not ideal for residential development. So I think that the only thing that would really please all of the neighbors around here is if this went residential, but that really is not a likely opportunity. So then it becomes, what is the next best use for the property? And you start looking at commercial, and this is probably the least traffic, the least daily use, the least obnoxious of anything that could go in there in terms of lighting, in terms of traffic. Out there, this is going to be a pretty light use in terms of in and out traffic. When it's going to be used, it's not likely to be used late at night. It's not going to be a noise problem from that standpoint. So I think that the opportunities that we have here, this is way better than a whole host of other possibilities that would come in. And so therefore, I'm going to move to approve per staff comments, citing a number of things. The zoning and the character of the neighborhood, this lends itself with that with the number 3, the protective overlay. Offers a number of protections to protect the properties in and around the area. Number 2 talks about the suitability for the property to which it's been restricted. It is not suitable for residential in my mind. And so I would, for those specifically, I would move to approve per staff comments and per the amendments or the changes to for additional buffering, tree, landscaping, and to the setbacks that we approved with those changes.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second it.
Motion made by Mr. Warren, second by Mr. Bill Johnson. I had one question on the enforcement. That was a concern that several of the speakers mentioned during their testimony. How is that enforcement of these landscaping requirements that we're putting into this, and when in fact do those landscaping requirements need to be met and during the time of construction and building that property out?
As the protective overlay is written right now, they just need to submit the revised landscape plan, the landscape plan prior to approval. So they can't get a building permit until the landscape and screening plan has been approved. Conditions can be changed to say, you know, certain things have to be in place before a building permit, but as of right now, just the plan, which guarantees that he was following what we have outlined here to say, yes, this will be in there. I can defer to J.R. Cox as to the other options.
Right behind you.
As to what it is, but the way the protective overlay is written right now is he cannot get a building permit until the landscape plan is approved. And as he said, he has to do earthwork on the property anyway before he build the building, so that lends to the berm getting done. And it's reasonable to expect that the landscaping would be done. And you could say that, you know, an occupancy permit cannot be issued until the landscaping is done. That's not in the protective overlay right now, but that has been something we have done in the past. Kind of buffering things up to ensure that things are done and not just lagging behind waiting to be enforced.
Okay. And Mr. Cox?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. J.R. Cox, Wichita, Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Department. For the record, the answer to the question on enforcement is actually twofold. So you have the first fold is time of construction. The Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department would be responsible to go through a plan review of this project, ensuring that all the conditions are met through that plan review, and then the building inspectors would do the inspection at the time of construction. So in theory, it should be all done when a final certificate of occupancy is issued. It's done. Later, maintenance, when that comes up, which invariably it will, there is staff that would address those issues.
Okay.
As for the timing of the screening requirements, I think it's safe to say generally construction projects do not do screening prior to construction or even concurrent with it. It's usually done near the end of the construction phase. Sometimes it's necessary that it be done that way just because of the work site. So if something other than that would be desired by the commission, that should probably be included in the action.
So before a certificate of occupancy is granted or issued, the landscape buffering on 63rd and Hydraulic would be done, or?
The code generally already requires that. However, if they do not have it done for some theoretically legitimate reason, whether, for instance, they can post a bond and do it at the next planning season, and they can be issued a temporary certificate of occupancy by the MAPCD, as far as I understand it, unless they've changed their processes.
Okay.
And then the final C of O would happen once all the improvements are complete.
Okay. Thank you for addressing the enforcement piece of that. Mr. Foster, did you have a question?
No, more comments and discussion.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. First one relates to the landscape treatment. I think we need to go a step further on that. I tally up over 2,250 feet of landscape treatment. We're talking just shy of half a mile. So this is a huge monumental task. I would suggest that we give the flexibility to the applicant that they could use a native grass or a warm season grass in this condition, because if you look at the character and drive around out there, it's warm season. It's not highly maintained fescue and stuff. I just don't think that's appropriate. Plus, it would be a huge burden to the applicant there to try and maintain something like that. So I think it'd be fully in character to consider some low native grasses like blue grama and buffalo and even little blue stem, just to actually keep it more in character with the neighborhood. I certainly like the applicant's concept of mixing the trees rather than trying to do a perfect treatment of trees evenly spaced and all that, because Kansas is terrible for growing stuff, so things are going to die. Just a couple other items ready to points of discussion. I've gone back and forth throughout this whole discussion, trying to figure out what is appropriate for this property. And as the neighbors have talked, it's not the nature of the opposition, it's the fact that the whole character of the neighborhood comes out. And it's residential in terms of the spirit and character of what the neighbors are talking about. So it makes me think of, if you think of 37th and Tyler there, we actually had a case where it came back and was changed from commercial to TF3. And today there's some very nice TF3 development up there. You got an arterial street condition, and that's happened 2 other times to this body. I can't tell you exactly where they were, but I remember the lot conditions. So it's conceivable that residential done nicely could happen there. However, if we consider the landscape treatments that I've mentioned there, I would support the motion.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments?
My question is, do we need an amendment to my motion to do that, or how would we address?
I would suggest that just to provide flexibility to the applicant.
I would be open to that amendment if you know how you would like to address it.
I would too.
If I could, the way the protective overlay is written doesn't pigeonhole the applicant into various types of bushes or grasses, or it says to use the landscape ordinance as a guide, or really that just a landscape plan be reviewed and approved. So there's not very specific language pigeonholing him into, well, you have to use fescue grass or you have to use a certain type of bush. So to your point, I know he's listening, and like I said, the way it's written, it's not in there to say it has to be done this way or that way.
I would just suggest we add to the motion that the landscape treatment be considered more of a naturalistic approach to fit the neighborhood better.
We could,
amend my motion to reflect that.
yeah, we could amend the protective overlay, that landscape treatment along the berm for buffering be naturalistic in nature, fitting within the general character of the surrounding landscape or something like that.
I'd second it.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second, and legal approves of the addition to that. And comments at this point are limited to the commission. So, okay, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, I'd like to make a substitute motion to deny.
Okay, we've got a substitute motion to deny, and it dies due to the lack of a second.
Did you ask for a second?
Oh, do we have a second on that motion?
I'd second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Joe Johnson, motion by Johnson, second by Fox. And Joe, do you, with your motion, do you have any of the reasoning with regards to the golden rules that could help to bolster your motion to deny?
I think with the character of the neighborhood and residential on all sides that have been developed, it's fitting for it to stay residential.
Okay. So we have a substitute motion. Any comments on the substitute motion? Yes,
I've
Ms.
been
Fox.
struggling with this situation also, and you know, the fact that all these residential spots have been vacant since 1985 and nobody's purchased them really struck me. But then I heard today that someone has recently purchased multiple lots. I know that in the last year, there's been a lot more focus on get me out of the city, get me into a place where I can be alone. When I look at, there's 2 pages of possible uses for limited commercial. And when I look at them, the majority of them provide something to a residential area that makes that area more livable. Things like the local beauty shop or the local, you know, pet daycare center or the local library or the local bank branch that makes this an area where I can get some of my, you know, weekly needs met nearby. And to me, a large storage place is not something that serves my neighborhood needs. So for the residential character of the neighborhood, I feel like that storage facility really doesn't make this neighborhood better, even though it would be a use for the land. The huge residential lots and the location of the lake, I would think most of the homeowners would have space on their lots to hold their own personal RV or, you know, other recreational vehicle on their own property if they were wanting to keep it, their boat, etc. So the struggle, and that's why I would support the alternative motion.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. McKay.
I'd like to make a comment. On the west side of town, there's a project almost identical to this, 135th and Kellogg. And being one of the developers of Auburn Hills, along with the city, from that to this area, it's been built up in the last 2 to 3 years with $200,000 to $400,000 houses coming right straight up. This is already in existence, so it doesn't seem to be having any effect whatsoever on residential growth. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments on the substitute motion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and we'll have a roll call vote, please, on this substitute motion.
Yes, sir. Roll call on the substitute motion. Green?
Nay.
Bill Johnson.
Nay.
McKay.
Nay.
Gross.
Nay.
Fox.
Yay.
Dool.
No.
Blick. Don't believe he's with us. Nix.
Nay.
Foster.
No.
Warren.
Nay.
Joe Johnson.
Yes.
Miles. Don't believe he's here. Mr. Hartman.
Nay.
Florence.
Yes.
That is 3 in favor.
8 or 10?
I have 9
9,
against.
9, yep. Okay, we will go to the motion. All those in favor say, we'll say aye. Those opposed will say nay, and we'll have a roll call on that too, please.
Okay. So this is for the original motion.
The original motion, yes.
Green.
Aye.
Bill Johnson.
Aye.
McKay.
Aye.
Gross.
Aye.
Fox.
Nay.
Dool.
Aye.
Blick's not here. Nix.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Warren.
Aye.
Joe Johnson. Mr. Johnson, Joe Johnson.
Give us a thumbs up or thumbs down. We're not hearing you, Joe. We're still not hearing you, Joe.
Oh, nay.
Thumbs, the John McKay.
Miles. Not here. Hartman.
Aye.
And Florence.
Nay.
Hey. 9-3.
Yep. 9-3.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that discussion. And moving on to our next case will be, hey, Mr. Zevenbergen again.
We're just efficient. We don't like to move people. Second case this afternoon. Is it morning yet? Are we tomorrow? Con 2021 quadruple 06 is within the city of Wichita. It's a conditional use request to allow a 125-foot cell tower for AT&T on a property zone, single-family residential, generally located about a quarter mile west of South Seneca and a half miles north of West 31st Street South. The location is on the site for the Southwest Presbyterian Church. The church is leasing a portion of their land to the location of this tower. The Unified Zoning Code provides areas within the city that if you locate within them, you can just do it by administrative permit. This is outside of that location. That map was attached in your staff report. Section 3A2D of the Wireless Communication Master Plan limits the height of towers in SF5 district that can be approved by administrative permit to 65 feet as long as it complies with compatibility height standards in the Unified Zoning Code. The proposed tower does exceed the height guideline of 60 feet, or this height guideline by 60 feet. Also, it is within 500 feet of a property zone, single family, which requires adherence to the compatibility standards of section 4C5B of the zoning code. That compatibility standard basically says for every foot you have away from a property line, you can go 1 foot in height. So if you have a 100-foot distance from your property line, you're allowed to go 100 feet tall. Lots to the north and to the west of the cider zone single family, using the scale that was provided in the site plan that the applicant provided. The tower is approximately 75 feet, give or take, from the lot line of the nearest property zone single family. Therefore, the compatibility height standard would limit the tower to 75 feet in height. The proposed 125-foot tower exceeds that height standard by 50 feet. The conditional use process can waive the height compatibility standards if they are exceeded and it is determined that the proposed height of the tower will not detrimentally affect the nearby properties. You want to go to the site plan, that'll be, keep going. There you go. So there's a lot of detail in the site plan. In the middle of that like broader dash circle, there's a dark bolded small circle. That's where the actual tower location will be. The lease area of the tower is 70 feet by 70 feet in size with a 20-foot access utility drive. The access easement is the same for the one for an existing drive going to the church parking lot, so it's already there. Access to the tower will be via the lease drive off of West Regal Street. The applicant indicates that this tower will be a monopole structure. The location of the tower within the compound is placed on the far southwest corner of the compound as opposed to the middle. This is in a way to give the most amount of distance between the nearest lot line and the actual tower itself. Cell tower will be located in a 50 by 50 foot solid screened compound. The screening is proposed to be a 6-foot screening fence with evergreen trees planted 15 feet apart, surrounding the exterior of the fence except for the gateway entry. The landscaping exceeds that of the landscape ordinance buffer requirements. And the minimum requirement would have 2 shade trees planted on all sides because it's abutting single family SF5 property. The tower is meant to provide additional telecommunication coverage for an area near South Seneca and West 31st Street. It provided a notarized statement stating that an analysis done of possible co-location sites was conducted and none were available to meet the needs in this location. Though the analysis was conducted, the state law prohibits that the possibility of co-location cannot be a factor in our decision making or for recommendation today. The state law that governs that is KSA 66/2019. It specifies 18 prohibitions when considering the application of a communication structure. I've outlined 5 of them below. We went through this with 2 recent cell tower cases, so I'll review them for you. The first one is the applicant's designated service, customer demand for service or quality, or the applicant's service to or from a particular area on a site cannot be evaluated. In layman's terms, basically saying there's enough coverage in the area. We think the coverage there is fine. We don't think you need a tower here. Number 2 is proprietary, confidential, or other business information cannot be required to justify the need for a new communication structure, including propagation maps and telecommunications traffic studies. You can't say, well, we've got a tower X amount of feet away, 2 miles away. This one, we don't need another one here. You don't need the addition of another tower. Number 3, the available of potential locations for the placement of communication structures, including but not limited to the option to co-locate instead of constructing a new communication structure, cannot be evaluated. Again, you can't say there's 1-2 miles away. Can't you just put your antenna on that tower instead? Or hey, instead of putting on this site, we want you to actually put it on a different site instead. Number 4 is the type of transmission equipment or technology to be used by the applicant, including but not limited to requiring an applicant to construct a distribution antenna system or small cell facility in lieu of constructing a new communication structure. Small cell is things that you'll find potentially on like light poles or power poles along street rights of way. Basically saying we can't dictate, well, we don't want you to do a tower. We want you to do multiple facilities in this area instead. It's up to their discretion as to what they feel needs to meet their needs in this area. And finally, the restrictions with respect to objects in navigable airspace, height limitations, proximity to civilian airports, or markings and lighting on communication structures that are greater than or in conflict with restrictions imposed by the FAA. Basically, when it comes to the height and stuff like that and the navigable airspace above, they just have to follow FAA guidelines. We can't say, we think your tower is too tall. That's for the FAA to decide. Staff reviewed the location of nearby towers registered with the FCC, which is the Federal Communications Commission. There are 8 towers within a 2-mile radius around the location. The reference that I used had an asterisk under say not all towers are registered with the FCC, so there might be other towers in this area. These were just registered with the FCC. The towers within the 2-mile radius range in height from 100 feet to 189 feet. The nearest tower is 1 mile south of this location at 1785 West 35th Street South, which is in between I-235 and a residential area. So if you're on I-235 near Seneca, can you see a cell tower on the north side? That's that tower. is 189 feet tall and is approximately 250 feet from the nearest residential property line, and the compound has no screening, fence, or landscape buffer from residential properties. The character of the surrounding area is single-family residential neighborhood. Property to the south and west are zoned single-family SF5 with single-family homes. Property to the north and east are zoned single-family, and it's the church property. The church property on which the tower is proposed is 2.5 acres in size, and the majority of the property is not occupied by any building or parking. Therefore, if you want to go to the aerial image, Paul, thanks. As you can see on this, a lot of the site is actually unoccupied or unused. Therefore, there is an opportunity for the location of the tower to be moved on the site to meet the height compatibility standards in relation to the nearby residential lot lines. The one in particular we're looking at is the one lot that faces West 27th Street. The back corner of their backyard property line is the one that's the nearest to the tower. However, alternate locations on the church property that could achieve this would make the tower more visibly prominent on the site. If you think to move it, one, if you wanted to move it into the parking lot, it would, potentially disrupt the use of the parking lot for the church. So then you would look at the grassy area on the east side closer to Elizabeth Street, and now you have a pole kind of a whole lot more in the middle, a lot more visually prominent for more people to see. It's deemed to be more visually obtrusive to the neighborhood. Alternate locations would also be more detrimental for any future redevelopment of the site. The current site of the compound is in a remnant piece of land between the access drive going to the parking lot and the rear yards for the residential properties. As stated before, the agent has placed the tower within the compound to be as far from the residential property lines as possible. The subject site was part of the Pancrat Second Edition, which was platted in 1952. 1.6 acres, and really the western extent, those 5 parcels that were taken out were replatted into the WHH edition and created into the 5 single-family lots that you see next to the church. The proposed wireless communications facility will not require any municipal services. However, there are water and sewer lines available on site. Access to the site is from the 20-foot utility easement or access easement. West Regal is a paved 2-lane local street without sidewalks. The comprehensive plan identifies the site as appropriate for residential and commercial. If you want a land use map, one over. The residential category is described as follows: encompasses areas that are likely to be developed or redeveloped by 2035 with uses that reflect the full diversity of residential development. On this land use map that you can see right where the tip of the arrow is a little shade of pink. That's the commercial that is identified. The commercial category encompasses areas that will be developed, redeveloped in 2035 with intensities and types typically found in a large municipal area, such as convenience, retail, restaurants, and small offices or personal uses located and in proximity to or mixed with residential uses. The site is also in the it's established central area governed by the Places for People plan. The Places for People plan includes different area designations within the established central area, the subject site, and the surrounding area is around the community core near West Pawnee and South Seneca. It's also located in an area identified as an area of stability. The plan defines an area of stability as places that require less intervention and potentially less investment to maintain a viable development environment for the community. Given the size of the overall site the church owns, there's the possibility of future redevelopment of this site should the current use cease. Placement of the tower compound elsewhere on the site to achieve high compatibility standards could greatly impact future redevelopment of the site. The Wireless Communication Master Plan, which was adopted in 2019, outlines guidelines for the location of cell towers. Section 3 states that tall wireless communications facilities should be limited to heavy commercial industrial areas and should decrease in height as intensity of development decreases as well, the shortest towers being located in residential areas. Additionally, facilities should be located and designed in a manner that minimizes the visual obtrusiveness and negative aesthetic impacts on surrounding properties. The height guidelines for residential areas is 65 feet to be approved by administrative permit. Anything taller than that would have to come by conditional use, which is why we're hearing it today. The combined conclusion for conformance to the plans and policies complies with the overall spirit and intent to accommodate both the expansion of wireless communication capabilities within the city, while honoring the introduction of this type of use at this location by requiring conditional use approval process and applying all supplementary use regulations to the property to mitigate possible adverse effects with this new development. Overall, staff is recommending approval subject to conditions that were outlined in the staff report. Number one, that section 3D6G, which is the supplemental use regulations for wireless communications facilities, they have to be met. The applicant shall obtain all necessary permits to construct the wireless communication facility within 50 days of submittal of the building permit application. It shall be erected within 1 year of approval of the conditional use by the planning commission or the governing body as applicable. Again, if this case is not protested, it does not go to the city council for final approval. So final approval from you guys really won't be until 2 weeks from now, potentially, when we know whether or not it's protested. If it is protested, it goes to city council for final approval. The support structure should be a monopole that is silver or gray or a similar unobtrusive color with a matte finish to minimize glare. The support structure shall be no taller than 125 feet, plus additional 5 feet for lightning suppression equipment. One change to what the applicant submitted is on item E, requiring an 8-foot tall solid screening fence instead of a 6 to help minimize the visual impact of the compound area or the equipment inside of it. This is still in addition to the landscaping that they proposed, and that they need to submit a site plan and elevation drawings to be reviewed and approved by staff and the planning director. The site shall be developed in conformance with the approved site plan. The applicant shall obtain FAA approval for it, and the site shall be developed and operate in compliance with all federal, state, and local rules and regulations. Findings for our recommendation is the character of the surrounding neighborhood is single-family residential. City staff is supportive of expanding wireless coverage in the city, but understand that municipalities cannot govern how tall a tower must be in order to achieve the goals of the wireless provider. The proposed site is large enough to accommodate a 125-foot tower and be in compliance with the height compatibility standards of the zoning code. However, alternate locations on the site would be more visually obtrusive and detrimental to any future development on the site. The site is zoned single-family residential and could be developed with single-family residences and it occupies unused land of a larger church property. The church is a permitted use with the single-family zoning district, and the future redevelopment of the site can support uses as permitted in this SF5 district. If we remove those restrictions and allow this conditional use, the proposed site is large enough to support the 125-foot tower, as I said before, and meet the height compatibility standards, but would be more visually obtrusive to the neighborhood. Staff is recommending additional height, or is it recommending additional height for the solid screening fence, and the applicant is proposing landscaping around the compound. Above and beyond the requirements of the landscape ordinance, these combined measures will help mitigate any ground level visual impacts. Staff is supportive of expanding the wireless communication coverage in the city and understand that municipalities cannot govern how tall the tower must be to meet the needs of the wireless provider. The subject property is developed with a church of 2.6 acres, and the majority of the site is open space. The location of the compound in relation to the overall site is within a remnant piece of land between the access drive and the property and the nearby residences. We've talked about the comprehensive plans and the wireless communication plan. And I can go through site pictures real quick. If we scroll ahead. This is looking north at the site. This is where the compound would be located. This is the Regal Street in front of me, and then you see the grassy area. You can kind of see where that access drive is. You can see a little bit above the grass there. It'd be located between that drive and basically where you see that shed kind of on the left-hand side of the building. Next site, please. Or next picture, please. This is looking northeast. These are the houses. What street is that there? On the west side of the property, these are the front of the houses. The tower would be placed behind them. Next picture, please. This is looking down Regal Street. You can see the open space on the east side of the church property, and those houses that would be across the street from that open space. Next picture. This is on the church property looking south at the residences across the street from the church. One more picture, and this is looking to the northwest. These are the rear yards of those properties that face to the west, but the tower would be built behind them. And that is it. I can stand for any questions you have for staff.
Do you have any questions? Yes, Mr. Foster.
Philip, in the conditions, it mentioned section 3D6, the development standards in the zoning code. I went and looked at those and then looked at the remaining conditions. My question is, I couldn't find how that related to addressing the two proposed easements on page 12, the site plan we have there. If those are outside the lease area, do they become part of the church's plat? Is there some sort of instrument that allows those easements to happen? And how do they go on record?
Those, my assumption would be those would be private agreements between the wireless provider and the church. The church agreeing to provide access, the wireless provider access on their property to get to the lease area for the tower.
So any utilities they bring in are going to be just like private utilities, and it would not be an easement relative to that utility.
Can you state your question one more time? I'm sorry.
Well, for example, on a residential property is they would flag that part of the utility that's typically in the easement, but sometimes they won't even flag the service line back to the property. Is this strictly, I assume, for a service line?
Gotcha. I'm not sure what utilities or lines come out of this. That might be something for the agent to address, and how potential easements might need to cover those. The easement that's on here is solely listed as an access easement.
Okay. I can ask the applicant as well. I got a question for the applicant too.
I guess it's a utility easement and proposed access easement. But yeah, I would defer to him.
Any other questions for staff? Yes, Ms. Fox, sorry.
My first cell tower, sorry. A monopole, does that mean the circumference is the same at the base as it is up top?
A monopole, as opposed to what another type of tower is, like a lattice structure where you have like a triangular base and multiple feet and all comes up, or potentially a more like a radio tower that would need guy wires coming down. So this is self-supporting. It is a singular pole. I don't know if the dimensions change as it goes up. I would assume the pole would be wider at the bottom than the top. But yeah, there's no support structure to it. It's self-supporting, doesn't have guy wires, and it only has one footprint versus like 4 feet, like a lattice would going up.
Question number 2, do we know if FAA requires a flashing light at the top of a 125-foot pole?
I don't believe for one that height. In the tower cases we heard earlier this year, that was a question that was asked, and I believe there's a height limit, and I know Mr. Clockey, who's the agent, can address this on a specific height, but I believe something of this height is not required to have one, but I'll defer to him.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Hearing none, we could have the agent or applicant. And if you could state your name and address for the record, and you have 10 minutes. Agent or applicant?
I'm on earlier. Mr. Clockey, are you there?
Here's.
I don't know if I see anymore.
Agent or applicant?
I saw him on early, or.
Okay, here I am. And can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I apologize because I dial in remotely. I can't use my camera, but I'm on my phone. So I apologize for that. So yes, my name is Glenn Clockey, and I work for Network Real Estate LLC out of St. Charles, Missouri. Our address is 5055 Highway N, St. Charles, Missouri 63301. We are the agents that do AT&T site acquisition in the Kansas and Missouri markets, in addition to Illinois. So yeah, the questions that are on the table. And first off, thank you, Philip, for doing such a great job of presenting this proposal. I appreciate it. The first question on the table was about lighting. This particular tower at this height will not be lit. There's no lighting requirement. The only time that you do have to light a tower if it's over 200 feet or if it's close to an airport. This one is not, and that will come with our final FAA approval letter saying that it does not have to be lit. The second question is the fencing around there. The drawings did say 6 feet. It will be changed to say 8 feet. It should have said 8 feet to begin with. It just got through with a 6-foot fence that will be revised and resubmitted. And the type of fence that's being installed is a Simtech type of fence. It's a solid looking fence, and it'll be whatever color the city decides they want it to be to match. And I think there were a couple other questions about the easement. The easement is between, it'll be between AT&T and the property owner. That particular easement there is for access, and the utilities will run through the same easement. The access road is there already. It's an asphalt road that we decided we would go ahead to use so that we wouldn't have to do any excavating or anything that the church actually wanted us to use. So we're going to utilize that. We're probably going to improve it quite a bit, and then the utilities will run along that same road in the same easement. It's all the same. If you look at the drawings, it's called out as an access, and then there's utility easement that runs along with that, and it'll just be the utilities for the tower.
Okay, are there any questions for the agent, Mr. Foster?
Mr. Clockey, just one question. On the enlarged site plan that we have, it refers to the proposed AT&T equipment area, but it also includes future carriers. There's 2 other locations. Is it safe to assume that those would just tie into this single tower being proposed, and we're not talking more towers?
No, that is, this tower will be a co-locatable tower. The foundation and the structure itself will be built to hold two additional carriers. It's something that is required, and yeah, that will be, if another carrier does come along and likes this location, their equipment will go inside our lease area, inside that fencing, and they will utilize the existing tower. There's not enough room for another tower in there.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Ms. Fox.
Could you clarify the monopole design? What does that mean about the circumference at the base and as you go up this tower?
So a monopole design it's a single pole, and at the base of the monopole, this particular monopole is probably going to be, and I'm guessing at this point, it'll, depending on how it's designed and how the soils come out and what type of concrete is going to be needed, it's probably going to be about 4 foot in circumference at the base, and then it tapers up. It's like any light pole that you see on the highway, the real tall ones that are probably taller than this, but it does taper towards the top. So when you get to the top, it probably tapers down to about, I'm going to guess to be about a little less than 3 feet, maybe even less. So that's what a monopole design is. There's nothing, no guy wires that come off it. There's no any type of additional structure, any type of things that hold it up. Just all the structure comes from the concrete in the ground, and there's huge bolts that bolt down onto the concrete. So it's like a big light pole is what it is actually. And they're silver. They're not silver. They're kind of a grayish in color.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the agent? Hearing none, we'll open
Mr.
this
Chair,
up.
If I could,
Yes.
I failed to mention this did go before the District Advisory Board 4 on March 1st. They had a unanimous approval of 7-0. There was no public comment at that meeting.
Okay, thank you for that information. Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to address the commission on this?
Yeah, no comment from Century 2 on this case.
Thank you, Mary.
That-
Is there anyone virtually that would like to address the commission? Anyone virtually that would like to address the commission on this cell tower case? Hearing none, we'll bring discussion back to the commission. Yes.
I don't think the applicant ever said he agreed to the staff comments.
Would you like to ask him? Mr. Clockey, you've seen the staff comments and requirements for this case. Do you agree to those?
I do. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we'll bring the discussion back to the commission for action.
Staff comments.
It has been moved by Mr. McKay, second by Mr. Dool to approve the request per staff comments. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next, we have, looks like the zoning case 2107, located at 5820 West St. Louis. Matt.
Yeah, good afternoon, commissioners. Matt Williams for planning staff. This is zone 21, number 7. The applicant is requesting the rezoning of a portion of lot 11 of West St. Louis Gardens Edition from single family to 2 family. The property is located at 5820 West St. Louis. This lot, lot 11, currently includes a single family home on the southern half of the property, and on the northern half, the property is vacant. The applicant's rezoning the northern half of the lot to allow for the construction of a duplex. The applicant will also need to split the lot to bring the whole property into compliance. The portion of the property that's being rezoned is approximately 6,750 square feet. The applicant has included a site plan in their application that indicates the duplex will meet the property development standards of the TF3 zoning district. The properties surrounding this are zoned single family. There are 2 other TF3 properties to the west, and then a couple on the east side of I-235. The subject site is located within the established central area identified in the community investments plan. The community investment plan also calls for this area to be appropriate for residential, and that includes housing types like duplexes. The Wichita Places for People plan provides more specific recommendations for the established central area. The Places for People plan recommends that new residential developments be designed to be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. In order to implement this community plan, the planning department recommends applying a protective overlay with design standards for this property. The design of this duplex that has been included in this application does not meet those design standards. Excuse me. Planning staff is recommending approval of this application with the protective overlay. The protective overlay again requires that the property splits this lot to create 1 lot with a TF3 zoning and 1 lot with a single family zoning, and then also includes the design guidelines as recommended in the Places for People plan. That includes design guidelines, the parking area not covering more than 50% of the front yard, and other issues. I can go through some of our slides here. Next slide. This is the property. So the whole lot is the red box, and then the piece of the property to the south of that where the single family home is. Next slide. Here's showing the residential designation from the community investments plan. Next slide. And then here is the property just to the north of the vacant spot. You can see kind of the vacant area right behind those two big trees. Next slide. This is the single family home that's currently on the property just to the south of the portion that's being rezoned. Next slide. And this is that vacant spot. Next slide. Kind of across the street. Next slide. Next slide. All right, so I'd be happy to answer any questions with that.
Do you have any questions for staff? Mr. Foster?
Matt, when I was going through the zoning, I could not find any lot coverage requirements for something such as this. And what gets my attention is thinking about kids and, you know, whoever's living here, just having some amount of a yard. And I'm not finding any lot coverage. Am I correct on that?
I don't have lot coverage in front of me. I know that, you know, the TF3 zoning district requires 6,000 square feet for a duplex. And this is, the lot's going to be 6,700 square feet. And then, you know, it complies with the standard setbacks, 20 feet in the rear, 25 in the front, 6 on the side.
Well, I'm also looking at the guidelines, one being no more than 50% of the front yard is going to get paved, which I think is important. Question related to that is, work when MAPC is going to be working with the applicant on permitting this, the reviewer is going to definitely go to this zoning and look to this protective overlay. I just want to confirm that.
That's my understanding, is that when they look at the property, the zoning will pop up, and that zoning will include the protective overlay, and they'll have all of this information in the staff report right there to review. So they'll be checking with the building permits to make sure that it meets all of these.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Hearing none, do we have the applicant? Mr. Evans? Mr. Evans, are you online? Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
can you
there
hear
is
this?
Yes. Is this Mr. Evans?
Yes, Dustin Evans.
Okay. Thank you for being here. If you could state your name and address, and you have 10 minutes.
Dustin Evans, 1543 South Walnut, Wichita. Yes, we do plan to put a duplex on this property. There's other TF3 properties in the area. We will abide by all the codes and regulations of the city to build our property on here and maintain it. That's all I have.
Okay. Do we have any questions for the applicant? I assume that you have read the staff report and are in agreement with the overlay that they've put in here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And just for clarification, please note that the picture of the duplex on the last page of our staff report, the one that you submitted, that does not comply with requirements as they are listed. Do you understand that?
Yes, as far as the driveway.
Not only that, but you need to have at least 10% of that facade in the front must be transparent.
Okay, yes, I will comply with all their regulations.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You bet. Don't go away yet. Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to address the commission on this case?
There's no comment from Century 2 on this case.
Okay. Is there anyone virtually that would like to address the commission on this case? Hearing none, we will bring this back to the commission for action.
There's someone trying to, because I thought we heard this case because there was someone who was interested.
There was somebody at Century 2 that was interested, and they're no longer there. So, okay. So we'll bring this back to the commission for action. It's been moved by Mr. Nix. Is there a second?
I second it.
By Mr. McKay. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We have no other public hearing items, but we do have a possible announcement that could be, it's a possibility, but we are going to have an announcement.
Yeah, it's an announcement with a possibility.
Thank you.
So what we're looking at is the council chamber here has been open to the public. The city council has conducted their first meeting that way, and it was successful. And so now we are looking at options to bring MAPC meetings into this chamber so that participants can attend live as well as the virtual option. So we are working on getting the announcements and the notices with the proper language to allow for that. So the first meeting where that is tentatively scheduled to occur would be the subdivision meeting on, I believe it's April 15th. Yes, April 15th. And that's what we'll be shooting for. And then the MAPC meeting the next week after would be the first MAPC meeting. But again, that is contingent on us being able to get the language and all the notices and everything worked out. And if we're not able to do that with that amount of time, then we'll have to push it back to the following meetings afterwards. But I will coordinate with you, Chairman Green, about that. So.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Commissioners would be required to be in attendance in person, or will a hybrid format be allowed?
It'd be a hybrid format. Essentially the change would be that Century 2 would no longer be an option for folks, and instead they would be asked to come here if they weren't able to participate remotely and wanted to be in person.
Any other questions? Hearing none. Go Shocks. We're adjourned.